Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Hopelessly Gifted podcast. I'm your host, Mark Talaga. Today, I want to focus again on something we've talked about a little bit, but from a completely different angle. A lot of times, kids are going through big transition periods in their life, and one of the biggest is going off to college. Now, we got to speak with someone earlier in another episode around how to help them manage that transition. But what about the families themselves? What about the parents? What about siblings? What about the people at home? What do they need to think about or focus on, or where are their needs not being met? I'm really excited today as our guest is going to enlighten us as to some things we should be looking out for as families managing the transition for our kids. Today, I have with me Julie Murphy. Julie is the founder of Waverly Educational Consulting, a personalized college admissions consulting business based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Julie and her small team work with high schoolers and their families as they navigate all aspects of the transition from high school to college, with special attention to supporting healthy family dynamics. She has a master's in educational psychology from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities with a focus in counseling and 20-year career in higher education administration prior to opening Waverly. She has led orientation programs for students and parents, developed a parent program to support parents of college students, and worked in admissions, collegiate recruiting, scholarship selection, and career advising. Personally, her most important role is as a mom to her three daughters who are quickly approaching the college phase. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, Mark. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for the kind introduction.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So yeah, let's kind of go right into it here. I'm always interested when people have a specific niche that they work with. What is it that excites you about working with families during the college transition?
Oh, it's hard to pick one thing. There's so
Uh-huh.
many, so many things that are this phase of life, I think, is just fascinating in terms of the opportunities that exist, certainly for students, at the precipice of adulthood and at the precipice of making some of those foundational decisions that will set them up for the rest of their life. And then, equally so for the families that support those young people. I think the excitement at this phase, if you allow it to be exciting,
Mm-hmm.
is a new chapter, right? And a new opportunity to I don't want to use the word reinvent. I think that's too strong of a word, but a new opportunity to maybe lean in to some interests that you've maybe let go for a while, in favor of raising your family. So I just think there's so many opportunities that are exciting. I also think it's a stressful time, and it's everything is changing, and change is always stressful, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and some of the biggest kind of bedrocks of our life are changing at this phase, and so it's stressful as well. So I love the complexity of this
Oh,
phase.
good.
Yeah.
So, speaking of the complexity, what is it about this that becomes complex for families? Where do you feel like they have maybe blind spots, or how do you help them navigate that, or what do they maybe even miss in all the complexity?
Yeah. Gosh, I think the complexity is that when you bring home a newborn, your life changes in an instant, and it goes from you're living your own life to now all of a sudden you're living a life on behalf of someone else and kind of to raise this young person, right? And that's a huge transition. We all recognize that transition, and we've all been through it as parents. And this is the other end of that. And I think the blind spots that I see are when families don't acknowledge how big of a change it's going to be and don't prepare for it as a big change. Because it's also there can be a lot of emotion with it, and there can be some sadness with it, and I think that can kind of cause people to put their head in the sand a little bit, as
Hmm.
opposed to looking at it maybe a little bit more logically and saying, how can I prepare for this? How can I set myself up as a parent for my next phase, for my next chapter?
Oh, absolutely. I think there is that kind of idea of like, well, this is just what happens next, right? They go to college and then they're out there and they come home for the holidays, and that's just what it is.
Yes.
So, where do you see that? Like, if you go in with that mindset, how does that maybe manifest in areas where it creates challenges for the family dynamic? And
Yeah.
alternatively, what would be a healthier way to go about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges is if parents are not attending to their own needs as this phase approaches. I think it can really complicate, and not to always go back to the student, but it can really complicate the student's own transition too. So if
Mm,
mom and dad are not taking care of themselves, and are not approaching this new chapter with intention for themselves, that can put a lot of undue pressure on the student who's just trying to, dry off their wings, as it were. And they're feeling that sort of weight of their parents maybe aren't so happy either. And sometimes that comes with guilt for students. So I think
Hmm.
it can show up in the students if this transition is not appropriately kind of attended to. And I think it can certainly show up in the parents where, the day you drop off your kid for orientation or for move-in should not be the first time you're thinking about this phase.
Yeah.
And if it is, that it's going to be a rocky road for a while. And I don't think it has to be that rocky if you plan it, if you transition early enough and kind of plan that scaffolding early enough. So I think, and then for younger siblings too, to be left at home with parents who are uh, grieving more than maybe is necessary,
Hmm.
um, because they haven't thought of this phase yet, is tough on young people, on the young siblings as well. So it can go all around, all the way to the family dog, right?
Oh,
Who's
sure.
talking to the family dog this time?
I got to start putting the dogs in for the family sessions I run, you
Take
know?
care about the dog.
That's really good. So, the idea of grieving, I think that's a heavy word, but I think it's a very
Yeah.
appropriate word.
Hmm.
What do you feel like parents that you've worked with, what do you see in that grief, or what is it that they're grieving in particular?
Yeah. Oh, I think a lot of things. I think that they're grieving their role, right?
Mm,
You bring this newborn home and you have this, it's your primary role. It's your job, it's your purpose. Whether or not you work outside the home too, it is for most people the job they care about the most, right? Um, and you're not quitting, you're being forced out. So I think that piece certainly is a bit of grief. And then, for some families, I think if the launch, and I say that as if it's a singular day, right? It's
right.
not the whole phase, but if things aren't going perfectly, which they never do, but when things go a little awry, or maybe junior's not as happy at college in the first 6 weeks that you expected they would be, or it's not as glossy as the magazine brochures that showed up on your doorstep a year ago, I think parents can sometimes doubt their own abilities and sometimes take that on as, shoot, did I do something wrong here? So
Oh,
that's complicating. That's not grief. That part's not grief necessarily, but I do think that's a really prominent emotion for parents when they drop their kid off, and certainly the first semester of school. And it can be longer than that too, but at least that first semester, a lot of parents, I think, have a lot of second doubts. But you have to be that rock for your kid too during that phase. So it's a whole lot of like, just push down those feelings, right?
oh, yeah.
Don't show your kid those feelings. So I think it's taking care of yourself as if you were grieving the loss of a loved one. You haven't lost your kid. You haven't lost your kid, but you have lost the way things were, right?
Hmm.
And now it's time to adjust to the way things are going to be in like the next phase, which they still need you. They still very much need you, but in a different way.
Oh, I love that. And since this is such a complicated process, can you talk a little bit about your process and what you do to help families manage this transition, or what you tend to highlight? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. So our process, we work with the whole family. I would say, when we work with students, we're very intentional with how we set up our curriculum so that we bring parents in intentionally at different touch points throughout the process. So we start with families and with students when they're in sophomore year or older, which is a little old for our industry, but I find that that's when students are really ready, and frankly, the parents are ready to start
Makes
talking about
sense.
school. Yeah. So we bring in parents when we're talking about like the bedrocks of the college search, building the list, certainly the finances. We'll talk about that piece as well. And then we welcome families to come in to other parts of the process too, but we put that ownership, or that sort of that gate sits at the student. So we say, if the student says it's okay for you to come in for a few other meetings, you certainly can do that, but we would ask that you ask the student's permission first. So first and foremost, it's the student's college search. I like to talk about it that we don't ever take the wheel from the student, because that's missing an opportunity for them. And we would expect that the parent never takes the wheel either. But we are passengers in the car, and we're helping to navigate. Um, So the way we set up the curriculum, I think, is part of it, and then we are on the phone pretty often with families as well. So we send out a lot of notes about how things are going, progress notes, things like that, and we welcome families to give us context from home. We really try to keep the language on the student, though. What is the student experiencing, and that conversation about context from home is very helpful in grounding that student in the process. So I would say those are the pieces of it that we're careful to not shut parents out, because I don't think that that's healthy either, to just say, this is entirely your kid's process. It's not that it's not
Right.
healthy, it's not realistic, right? Um, so that's how we approach that piece of it.
No, that's great. And what I'm hearing the most is this idea of, even in your process itself, you're metaphorically aiding in the separation, right? This
Absolutely.
is that you are separating now from mom and dad. And so there's responsibility on you, there's ownership on you, there's agency on you to move through this. And
Yes.
I would imagine for some parents and for some kids that can be really, really hard,
Yes.
where especially with a lot of the kids that we work with in the gifted world and the neurodivergent world, where because there's such a special needs population on some level,
Hmm.
the family has always operated as a single unit to support that kid. So when you're faced with that, does that change anything for you? Does that make it trickier, easier? I don't know.
Yeah, it can make it. I would say it's not just the gifted population, but any
Yeah.
family that comes as a single unit, that can be trickier. But it's not. We meet families where they're at, and then we move them along the process. So it's a matter of us adjusting a little bit, and also them adjusting, and we meet in the middle in those conversations. I would say that um, one of the ways we like to frame it with students and with families is that you've got a limited amount of time before you are not, for most students, still under your parents' roof. That's not always the case, right? Sometimes you're commuting from home. But for most of the students that we work with, they're going to leave home and they're going to live in a dorm and be taking care of themselves and learning those sort of adulting skills as well. So we like to use the college search as an opportunity for them to practice those skills while they are under the safety of that nurturing environment. So what's it going to be like when they are on a college campus and they need to schedule a meeting with an academic advisor, for example? And they show up to that academic advisor meeting, and that academic advisor says, "What would you like to talk about?" And maybe they thought, "Well, you tell me."
I
I'm going to
thought
check
that
in
was
with
your
you.
job.
You're
Yeah.
supposed to help me. So that happens pretty often, where students are kind
Yeah.
of, there's a learning curve there, where they realize just how much of their future is in their own hands, and they get to take the wheel and get to kind of navigate where they're going with it. But those skills require practice. You don't just wake up on the day after graduation and know that you have to be prepared for office hours. You have to maybe, think for half an hour before you go to that meeting about, what do you care about? What do you want to know about? How can this person help you? So we find that for the majority of our students and our families, even those that start as a full unit, as a singular unit, um, if this is what they want, if this is the kind of process that they're looking for, that by the time they're done with us senior year, those seniors are calling meetings with us, they are setting agendas with us, they're telling us what they want to cover in our meetings. It's the most beautiful transformation from sophomore walking in the door, who very much needs to still be guided, and is guided by everybody in their life, to now they're a senior. And isn't that what we're all going for eventually? And not every kid is always ready on graduation day, right? That's kind of a false sort of finish line. But eventually, we want our students to be ready to stand on their own as well.
Oh, I love it. So, yeah, such a solid framework, kind of a testing ground to
Yeah.
practice actual skill development of what it means to individuate and advocate. And, starting at sophomore year, going all the way to college and beyond. Yeah, it's a 2-year process and program. I think that's great. Now, let's flip it and talk about the parents, because where are they needing frameworks and things and skills to focus on?
Yeah, and I often think about, Mark, how can we do more of that within our work, more intentionally with parents? And yeah, there's room to grow, certainly, in terms of
Oh,
how we
yeah.
structure. But when I think about, personally, I have my eldest is a ninth grader right now. So I haven't gone through this yet, but I certainly have a lot of clients who have, a lot of families who have. And when I used to work, you mentioned I work in orientation. So I was often, the person greeting greeting the families. Actually, I was often the person saying, okay, now students, you go to convocation, and parents, you
Right.
need to go this way. And it's the different direction. And the look on the parents' faces was, what is that? Right? For some of them, it was like, okay, I'm ready. And others, it was like, what? I'm not going to be able to, be right next to my kids. So I've seen a lot of examples of it. So I've thought a lot about this.
Hmm.
I would say the like practical, tactical things that I think really make a difference are to approach the transition as if you were, to use the newborn metaphor again, too, right? You don't just go to the hospital and have a baby. Like, you think about it for a long time ahead of time. There are baby showers. You're getting the room ready. Like, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it for at least as long as you know that you're going to have a baby, right? At least 9 months. So I would probably do a year and a half or so of that
Yeah.
sort of intentional, maybe when they become a junior, you start really thinking about what is my life going to look like without this kid, 24/7 with me or under my roof. So some things, for example, are you maybe don't need to go to everything.
Mm.
I see a lot of families that go to every sporting event of their kid, every theater production, and the intent is good, right? They want to support their student. They're entertained by their student, right? But if you can build in a little space there and a little time to start filling in some of your own activities that have nothing to do with your kid, I think that that's one piece that can, so that your entire social life doesn't also rest on your kid, and your entire way that you spend your time doesn't rest on your kid. You're at least making a little bit of space for that. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
say that is one tactical piece.
But what I'm also hearing is it's not this. I get the sense that parents can be like, well, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend more time with friends, or I have my other kids. I'll just focus on them. But you're saying it's a very thoughtful, intentional, you're creating something
Yeah,
for yourself that is going to be different. It is going to
correct.
be with you at the focus, you at the helm.
Correct. And I think, for some parents, and I'll speak for myself as a mom, like a big part of my job as a mom is calendaring and planning and, making sure that all the trains are going on time, right? So if that's your mode, maybe lean into that and use that same mode, but now apply it to yourself. So
Hmm.
is there a book club that you've always wanted? You start your own book club. Is there a musical instrument that you played when you were a kid that you haven't touched because your kid's been too busy, and now, it's still sitting there, and maybe it's calling to you again. So, like, structuring some things for yourself, I think, is helpful, and not just assuming that when you have days that stretch out ahead of you without anything to fill them, that you are then going to, like, you can do it that way, right? I just think it's a lot rougher to do it that way than it is to start scaffolding early, and to start to identify who's going to be in your social group,
Hmm.
because the parents who are not leaving, if you are on the verge of empty nesting, you're dropping your last kid off to school. If your friend group includes a lot of parents who still have high schoolers at home, they're not there yet. So maybe it's intentionally reaching out and making friends with people who are a little further down that road or who've gone through it before. I remember that was one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I had toddlers was, don't just hang out with other parents of toddlers, because we all don't know what we're doing, right?
Right. Right.
So put yourself in some rooms with people who've been through it, who can help you with some perspective too. So it may be making some new friends too and adding to your social group.
Well, and it's very intentional, very thoughtful to, make sure it's not just, oh, I'll make friends. It's like, who are these friends and why are we making with these specific friends and
Right.
why am I engaging in this task? And I think that's really a lovely way to look at it. The other thing that comes to mind is the idea that a lot of parents, again, will get this intellectually. Yes, I know I should be doing more stuff for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's capability and probably time, but the real challenge is emotionally. I'm emotionally feeling conflicted about focusing on myself. Do you see that in the parents that you work
100%.
with? Yeah.
Yes. I think that's the main reason why there's avoidance, right? Because it's hard. Those emotions are hard. Um, I will say again, I'm not here yet personally, but I will say that working with college students for as long as I did, they need their parents. Like, there is no doubt about it that parents are still by far the most important influence in their life. So your job is not over by any stretch. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, right? Some people are hoping
Right.
for, but
Yeah.
I think that there's, for a lot of people, there's some comfort in that. It's just that it's going to shift, and
Right.
I also think it's going to shift if you allow it to, and if you're intentional to. It's going to shift in some really cool ways, um, where you now have a more adult, kind of peer, a little bit more of a peer relationship with your student, and you become a little bit more of a spectator of their life as opposed to director of their life.
Well, and even the way your kids will experience you as
Mm-hmm.
you take on more for yourself is important. All parents say to me, "Well, I just want my kid to be happy." And I always say, "That's lovely." But
Mm-hmm.
guess what kids want? They just want their parents to be happy.
Yeah.
They're good if mom and dad are good on some level as well, and you
Yeah.
can't lose that. And so what I hear you saying a lot of is when you put that focus on yourself, when you live your own unique identity in your own life, and you're creating that for yourself while still being available to your kids,
Yep.
that actually might be a more effective way of supporting the kids as they're off to school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is a much more effective way because you're removing that sort of anxiety for them and that worry for them that mom and dad are not okay, 400 miles away from home. And what are they going to do about it? They can't do anything about it from where they're at. And I think there's also some sort of mirroring for them, or so you're setting a bit of an example for them too, at the same time that you are more likely than not going to be telling them, hey, open your dorm room door, get out there, start meeting friends, go to the club. I know it's hard, but go to the club. Like, just turn a little bit of that back to yourself. And if
There
you
you
can
go.
demonstrate to them, hey, I went to my Parcheesi club or whatever it is last night. I didn't know any of these people, but I gave it a shot. Like, what better way to kind of encourage them to put themselves out there too than to do it yourself, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it applies a framework, you're modeling,
Yeah.
and you're doing for yourself as well as the kid. That's really great. So, I have clients where, the kid, as they were transitioning to college, they had a lot of struggles, they needed a lot of support, and eventually the parents got them off and running, and but they had a younger sibling at home, and the younger sibling was like, "Oh, great, now mom and dad's, uh, crosshairs are on me."
Right.
And what is that going to look like? And so, yeah, let's talk about that change a little bit for the siblings.
Yeah. Oh, I think that can go a lot of different ways for sure. I think for a lot of families, what I see is that the younger sibling, it depends on how successful, put that in quotes, right? How successful the older siblings are. I think for siblings of successful older kids who maybe made it look easy, having them gone out of the house is oftentimes a big relief,
Mm,
because they can start to find themselves outside of that sort of comparison model. So I've seen it work that way, and then I've seen it work the other way, where if mom and dad are maybe not attending to themselves and pouring all of their parenting energy now into the last child that's at home, as opposed to spreading it evenly, I think that can be overwhelming for that younger sibling too. So yet another reason to have mom and dad attending to their own needs too.
oh, for sure. As you were talking, it made me think about, again, you mentioned it as this is an opportunity, right? This is a chance to do something differently
Right.
in a positive way. And the opportunity for even those siblings to maybe alter their relationship. They're going to connect differently. They're going to talk to each other differently. I suppose that would be another way to look at that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. I think those relationships can deepen over time too. And sometimes when there's a really big age gap, at home, that doesn't really show up as friendship, until that age gap matters less, which tends to happen, depending on how old the kids are. But a lot of times that'll happen in college and kind of early adulthood. So yeah, I think opportunity is the right word, Mark, for all of
Yeah.
these. Yeah. I will
All
say
right.
one other. I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt
all
you.
right. We'll take a pause right there, and then you just go right into that thought.
Okay. I will say one other thing that I notice is that a lot of times the dads struggle a little bit more with this transition than the moms do, which I don't really have an answer for why that is, but I have noticed that maybe it's our society that tells dads that they can't show emotion, until it's all there, right in front of them. But I
Hmm.
do notice that a lot of times dads kind of tough guy it through this process until they fall apart, whereas moms maybe tend to anticipate it a little bit more. So don't mean to be painting huge generalizations, but I do think that this message is important for dads.
I think that's absolutely true. And again, you think the idea of what it means to really express what it will feel like for that kid to be gone. I've had so many dads come in my office and be like, oh, it'll be great. I'll have, more time. There's less noise. And I'm like, okay, that's funny.
Mhm.
Now, what's it really going to be like?
That's right.
And when, and it is a little difficult, and it's not just men, but a lot of people that struggle with getting in touch with this idea that I will be sad. It almost feels like, oh, I'm going to taint them leaving if I express that I'll miss them or that I'll be sad.
Right. Right. And I think, gosh, how many times in parenting are there fine lines to draw, right? But this is one of them. I think that you want to show up for your kid as a full human because
Mm.
that's the best gift you can give your kid, right? But if you're destroyed by this emotionally, you do want to protect your kid a little bit from seeing maybe the worst of the bawling, right? Maybe you save that for the car ride home, but it's okay to let a few tears slip through. So kids get it. They know that the parents are going through something tough here too. And I think showing up for your kids and communication is key. Talking to them about it, letting them know, hey, this is my first time too. This is tough for me too. They understand that, and I think they appreciate when parents are honest and real with them.
I think so too. And would you advise parents or families to create structure around that communication? Meaning, like, let's talk about when we're going to talk. Like, do you want me to call you every day? Do you want me to call you once a week?
Yes, absolutely. That's a huge, a really good opportunity to put some structure on it for everybody so that you're not left wondering, should we be talking more? Should we be talking less? And for you as a parent, you can move on in between those moments of, touch points, whether that's once a day, once a week, whatever is right for your family. Um, yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Also, when you put some space in it, I mean, I remember when I was in college, granted this was 25 years ago now, but it was not, cell phones were not in our pocket and we couldn't pick up the phone and talk to mom and dad at every moment. And so I think one of the big shifts that I've seen in college students is that they have mom and dad as that speed dial at every moment of every day. And so when they're going to use that speed dial, very often is when things are not going well. It's when, they just walked out of a test that they don't think they did well on, or they just had a fight with their roommate and it's speed dial to mom and mom and dad can help me think through this or help me solve this problem. Whereas mom and dad then are left with just the bad stuff, right? And
Hmm.
they don't always see that full cycle of once they release their emotion to you on the phone, they hung up the phone and they went back to living their life and now they're actually better because they just unloaded onto you. But you don't get to see that
Right.
until the next phone call. So I think spacing out and this is probably easier said than done, but even like scheduling it and saying we're going to talk on Sunday nights or we're going to talk on Thursday nights or whatever it might be can avoid some of that where you become the recipient of, you become the therapist, if you will, or the recipient of I'm just going to hear the problems that need to be solved.
Well, and again, if we're talking about modeling,
Yes.
and we're having these structured conversations, but the conversations tend to be, how are you doing? How's school? How's your classes? How's your grades?
Right.
Because you don't have enough to talk about in your own life, because we want parents to be able to say, here's what's going on with me. Here's what I got to do. Here's something I'm trying,
Yes.
right?
That's
That,
exactly right.
yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. And for some students, I mean, it's a change for them too. Everything is changing for them, including their relationship with their parents. And for some students, hearing that sort of thing, like, oh, you changed my room. My room's now a sewing room, right? That can sometimes be like a little bit of a jab to the heart, or what does that mean for me? But those are all very necessary changes to go through. And I think communication is definitely, has to be there too when you go through those changes. So, yeah, you're spot on there.
Right on. Okay, now I'm going to turn in the lens on you a little bit if you're okay with that.
Sure.
What do you feel like as you're approaching this transition in your life is going to be maybe your biggest challenge, or what do you anticipate being the hardest thing for you, if you don't mind sharing?
As a mom,
Yeah.
that's a great question. I think it is. I have a couple answers. One of them is it's hard for me professionally because of what I do to
Hmm.
separate to do that appropriately with my own kids, like to know how much to talk about college and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that's a piece of this for me that may not resonate with everybody, but that's a piece of it. I think for me as I approach My first kid going off to school, I think the biggest challenge is going to be to identify. Okay, I feel really positive about it, to be honest.
That's fine. You don't. It doesn't have to be
Yeah,
negative.
it's still 3 years away.
Right.
If you were to ask me in 2 years, I may very well feel differently about it. But right now, it just feels like possibility.
Oh,
I
that's
have
good.
so many things I want to do that I haven't done yet with my life that I'm really excited to do them. So to me, it feels like I want to get back to playing the piano. I used to play the harp. I want to take harp lessons again. Like
No way.
I have a list of what I'm
Well,
going to do when my kids are gone. But I'll miss them like crazy too. So yeah.
but what you're talking about is important because you've been able to deal with that challenge
Hmm.
because you've created, you had the framework and the structures to say, I've thought about this and I have things. There
Yes.
are things I've built that. And because I've built that, I don't anticipate this as being challenging. And yes, we'll never know for sure. But
Hmm.
that's what parents who don't have that may have a different answer than you. And
Yes.
they may hear you saying, like, oh, well, she doesn't relate to it. It's like, no, no, no. It's not that she doesn't relate. It's that she's
Right.
dealt with it. Julie's got it on some
Yes.
level that could be helpful to parents out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're honest with yourself, we're dealing with this from the moment we bring our kid into the world, right? Like they're close. They're the moment that they are born is like that's when they are closest to you, and then every second after that, they are individuating in every single phase, right? So this is just the last of all. It's not even the last. It's one of
Right.
all of those phases of individuation, and I think we put so much pressure on this particular one because in our society when a kid goes off to college, that's like this marker of some faux adulthood, which may or may not exist for that kid. But it just carries so much weight in our society, and I prefer to look at it as it's one of many. And we've done this before. We've dropped our kid off to kindergarten. I've dropped my kid off to daycare, and I've put my baby in the arms of a loving person who I didn't know, and I trusted that that person would take care of them well. Turns out they did. They took care of them really well, and
Right.
my kids are better off for all the loving people in their world. And I think this is one more example of that, where you want to find with your student a place where they're going to thrive and where they're going to be surrounded by people who love them and support them. And that's your job as a parent, right? It's not to
Right.
always be that person, but it's to help them find those people.
Right. To find those people or how do they manage it when those people maybe aren't there for them in the way that they need. And rather than saying, well, they're not going to help, so I'm going to cut that off. It's like, well, hold on now.
Yep.
We need to look at that a little bit more with a fine tooth comb to understand what might be missing or what you might need more support in. Because as you're talking, like I've had those same experiences with my kids. I'm like, help, off you go. And I'm a counselor by trade. So I'm like, what I'm supposed to do is allow this transition to happen. And I could kind of talk myself through this stuff, but not that it was easy. Um, but you also have people that have never had a positive experience with other people working with their kid, right?
Mhm.
And so there is this kind of underlying sense of trauma that keeps you in this place of,
Yeah.
I don't know how to make it seem like it's going to be okay, so I'll just do it because I've been the one for so many years to handle it when they're hurting, rather than, okay, it is their time to start to learn to manage this for themselves. And how do I change my role to be more of this mentor that's helping them develop the skill,
Yes.
right? If that's possible.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that takes scaffolding too, right?
Yes.
And scaffolding for your kid doesn't, like I said, doesn't wake up on graduation day and they're ready to go, just like you're not. So, yeah, that piece takes scaffolding too. There is an awful lot of trust in sending a student off to school, whether they're commuting or not, like sending them into a new environment, there is an awful lot of trust. So, it's a huge decision. It's a huge process to go through to try to find that good fit for a student, and not everybody hits it right the first time either. So I think anything we can do as parents to help our kids develop that resilience and to demonstrate that resilience ourselves too. It doesn't mean you're never going to make a mistake, but the mistakes are actually where the learning happens. So easier said than done, I know.
Well, that's why you start early, right? That's why you get ahead of it. We talk about it now. I mean, there's a lot of listeners out here that this episode won't apply to me. My kid's not for college for years.
Yeah.
And yet this idea of individuation, of
Yes.
separating, knowing that that is a healthy milestone of development. And yes, it happens multiple times in our life, but that we are striving to create that. And are we aware of that? Are we aware that that's our job and that's what we're trying to develop? Or do we feel like I'll think about that when I need to or when I'm walking my kid down the altar? you know, that might be something you got to start a little bit earlier, which is why I love what you're doing for these families.
Yeah. Yeah. We try to, and it's, every family approaches it differently. And we try to kind of meet, like I said, meet them where they're at too. It's not easy. None of this is easy. And we're all human and we're all trying our best with it. So even the families, even the parents who have their head in the sand, there's reasons why they do too. So trying to bring those out even a little bit, to look up and kind of see the horizon once in a while is important.
I think that's lovely. So let's see. You're going to do piano. You're going to do harp. You're going to do what else are you going to do? I'm just interested and
Cooking
curious.
lessons. I want to
Oh,
learn
there you
how to
go.
cook. My husband is the cook in our house, and I'm a little competitive, so I'd like to be better than he is.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that, and I also, one thing we didn't talk about is if you are in a relationship, rekindling that a bit, like that sometimes is the thing that gets put to the wayside when you're parenting too. So I've seen a lot of parents who go on trips, like from when they drop their kid off. So they drop their kid off to school and then they just keep driving and they go on the
Yep.
trip of a lifetime. So I think sometimes that's a nice way to kind of demarcate. When I come home, it's going to be after this big trip. It's not going to be after I bawled my eyes out, right?
Right.
So yeah, I'm,
Oh,
I'm
I
excited to
love that.
travel, all sorts of things. How about you, Mark? Do you think about what you want to do?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm like you. I have lists and lists of things I want to do. I want to get back into music again, playing drums and guitar again. I've always wanted to learn another language, and I've
Oh yeah.
never. Oh boy, that's a challenge for me, but it's definitely on my bucket list. My wife and I love to travel, so I know that's going to be on there. But yeah, our hope ultimately is that we create kids that feel secure enough in our relationship with them and with themselves that we go off in these areas and we're still a big part of their life, but
Yes.
we're not the sole focus. And I know that will be the case. And I'm saying that logically and clinically right now, but that is going to hurt like hell. And I know it.
Yep.
and I know it.
Yep. There's no sugarcoating it.
yeah,
There's no
yeah.
sugarcoating it.
But might as well just own it for what it is. But
Yeah.
I got it.
Yep.
Oh, this is wonderful. All right, Julie. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I think this was a very inspirational and hopeful conversation for a lot of parents out there. And as always, to those listening, if you have questions, concerns, challenges, or just want to drop us a comment, please head to hopelesslygifted.com and leave us a comment there so that we can answer your questions in future episodes. Thank you again, Julie. It was such a lovely pleasure to have you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. This was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all listening. Bye bye.